Is AMD missing out on market share? That's how they titled the chapter, but I would also kind of phrase it as, why does AMD continue to mess up every single time they release a graphics card? A lot of you guys might have even found my channel through why AMD graphics cards are so great but nobody buys, why their marketing strategy is so garbage. It's going to be almost a part 2 to it. In this video, we reacted to a hardware unbox Q&A video where this basically turned into an unhinged rant about the ridiculousness of how AMD handles their situation in the market. AMD needs to hear this. I got 3 things to tell you about real quick. Obviously, this was done on a live stream. Diet Coke or no? Do you know what a Diet Coke? Diet Coke is gray. If you want to join for these chats, they're on Thursday nights at 10 to 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yes, later night streams. Second thing, if you've been enjoying this content, maybe consider subscribing, because I feel like I should ask that a little bit more, and it just goes to support the channel and the community as a whole. And the third thing is this word from our sponsor. If you're anything like this, Microsoft is coming to get you and wants to charge $200 for Windows 11. That's why our only hope is SCDKEY. With them, you can get Windows 10 Pro for a low price and upgrade it for free to Windows 11. Once you get to checkout, make sure to use code VEX for an extra 25% off of this already great deal, and just choose your preferred payment method and you will be emailed your code. Working with SCDKEYs, all of their codes have come from OEM manufacturers and they're completely safe, so no need to worry about that. Again, huge thanks to today's sponsor. Make sure to use code VEX. Let's get back into it. I've never seen a positive review for a Radeon when they release new. Then they're always mentioned as great options after, with the price drops kicking in. Yeah, that's usually how Radeon products go. Yeah, it's almost like they try to act like they aren't the value option. People have been saying mind share, which is cool because there's like market share and then there's mind share. Mind share is how many people have a good view of your product, that how many people think about it and want to buy it as the first option. AMD doesn't have mind share, and they need to build mindshare. All right, so let's just go ahead and start this.
Well, all right, I have a bit of a sneaky suspicion that Tim might have a little bit to say on this one, only because you've said a bit about this in the past with RDNA 2 and stuff. You've been a bit...
Sure.
Do you think AMD is missing out on market share by taking too long after the 4060/4070 releases to come out with their 7600/7700 releases? New RDNA 3 Radeon GPUs.
Yeah, I mean... AMD doing AMD things.
Battle Mage is gonna blow the doors off of these two. I hope so. I wanna, before we get like deep into just AMD, I didn't realize how bad fanboying is. And now I've seen it in my comments. Say like I make an AMD video that's saying like positive things about its performance and its value nowadays. Somebody will comment like AMD's trash and Nvidia's the only way to go. Why would you buy AMD? You're so freaking stupid. We need to stay focused. All right. When Intel makes Battle Mage, we shouldn't fanboy over it. The only reason like I'm excited about Battle Mage is because Intel has a compelling product, and because both Nvidia and AMD are sitting so complacent in this market, they actually have a good opportunity to strike. I judge GPUs on value. If you know anything about me, my PC is very function over form.
They've still got quite a lot of RDNA 2 supply in the market, so that's obviously a factor for them, and probably impacted the 7600 launch as well with their weird sort of pricing stuff and changing at the last minute. It's been a long time, but there's still 6800 XTs to purchase, 6950 XTs, those sorts of products can still get them, and that's going to impact, you know, what they can do with a 7700 or 70.
Tim just brought up a really good point. So like obviously they have a bunch of RDNA 2 stock, like the 6700 XT that we're just talking about. This guy, and when they launched the 7600, which now goes for a little bit cheaper than 270, which was already at 300 or whatever, that was supposed to be the MSRP. Realistically, it didn't offer a very good value proposition. It just made it a nothing burger of a card. Nobody really cared. The 6650 XT for less than it, and it performed the same. AMD does have that problem with their previous gen stock, and it is important to take into account how they're approaching this. It's up to them to figure it out, and it ain't our fault.
800, which we'd be expecting to perform like an RDNA 2 product from previous years. Don't really know how much more efficient it would be. AMD was already offering good VRAM sizes, so it's not really like they could go, well, this previous gen model had 8 gig, but now we're offering 16 gig. No, they already had 16.
RDNA 3 chips, all the ones they haven't released, obviously they released a 7900 XTX at $1,000. Then they released a 7900 XT at the same time for $100 less. Obviously, we're gonna get into that. The card was a flop at the beginning, but nowadays it's starting to look pretty good. And then they skipped all the way down to the 7600. So they went from $900 all the way to even, what is that, 270. There's a lot of cards that should go in between those two. Here, they've geared up to release a 7700 XT. These are supposed to be coming in September. There's actually a huge gap in the market right now between $300 to around $500. The 4060 Ti from Nvidia is garbage in that price point, and then they just released a 16 gigabyte one. We're just all gonna pretend that card didn't happen, okay? Finally, AMD actually has an opportunity with these cards that are kind of like mid to high end cards, could actually fill that gap and could have a compelling product in there and really put possibly the hurts to Nvidia at that price point. Krista says the 7800 is going to be 5% faster than the 6800 XT. I mean, yeah, I've made videos on the 7800 XT. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be embarrassing, but it all depends on the price. So, yeah.
Pretty much ready to go. But I think, like with a lot of AMD things, it's kind of just like there's always an opportunity for AMD to do something and they never take it. So
there's an opportunity for AMD to do something and they never take it. I got the top comment on my why AMD graphics cards are so great but no one buys them. Top comment: never underestimate the marketing department's ability to negate the engineering department's work. That's exactly what happens here. AMD, it's AMD's marketing, not really the products.
So, I mean, how many times have we seen, like, you know, Nvidia does something where they produce an expensive mid-range product, and everyone's like, nah, it's too expensive, not interested. And it's like, AMD, you could make a nice, cheap, affordable GPU, and you're going to get a lot of sales and market share. And they're just like, no, we're not going to do.
Why would they be so nice like that? No, that'd be weird. Because when it comes down to AMD releasing products, even if everyone on the planet, if all of us PC gaming nerds can see it right there, it's like, oh, there's a clear gap in the market that AMD's actually in a position to release a product right now that would fill that gap, and it'd be great. It's like that $300 to $500 market right now. It doesn't seem like they even care. They don't care to compete. That's what I've kind of noticed, and I think I pointed out in my last video, if you guys watched that, I think they do it on purpose. Try not to put that much pressure on Nvidia because I don't think they're as interested in gaining up market share or mind share. They're more interested in just maintaining their margins and making money and then having a stable market here, whereas they're actually very much hard focusing on AI right now, servers, and Ryzen's in a good spot for consumers, so AMD is happy there, and they're selling a lot of their gaming revenue through consoles. So it's like, why should they even care about the PC gaming market? That's the position they're in right now. That's why we need a third competitor to crack a whip on these guys and get them into shape, because AMD doesn't even want to compete with Nvidia. I feel like that's part of the reason as well. When I first got an AMD graphics card, I didn't know. So literally in the box, they say, thanks for joining the red team. Like you're in a cult. We're not in a cult. We're buying a graphics card. Part of the reason why they lean into like the fanboy stuff is because that's how they make their sales, instead of actually trying to stretch their wings and cover a broader audience, people that actually gain market share. They're just like, hey, you didn't buy Nvidia. Cool. Ah, man, the product was good. I got a 6700. That thing was a beast for the price. Made me cringe. That's a freaking graphics card. Who cares?
Yeah. I remember talking to the AMD reps on the phone when the 7900 XT was launched, and it was $900, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not making that
up. Which is crazy, but yeah, it was.
When it was $900, and they're asking.
It was $900. What did the 6900 XT launch at? Was the 16? You guys correct me. Was the 6900 XT during mining? Like, did it? So this launched at $1,000. Yeah, so that was the idea. It was like, oh, we're knocking $100 off of the 900 XT price. Yeah, so it was just before it. Yeah. That would make sense. It's like, oh, we're knocking $100 off of that price, so it must be a good deal. But then they released the 7900 XT. Yeah, compared to the 6900 XT, you can name it whatever you want. It looked like a decent deal on paper, but when you looked at what the prices were actually going for in the market, I think 6950 XTs were already going for so much cheaper at the time. I think they're going for like around $700. Now they're around $600, which is, this wasn't that far behind. That only would have been like 10% behind. They called it a joke. That's probably fair. When you get up to the top tier of performance, Nvidia just feels like they're completely unchecked because people want to buy literally the best thing. When they have that much money, they're going to buy the best product they can. And Nvidia does make the best GPUs. Like, you do make compromises going with AMD. They aren't that big of compromises. You still make some compromises. So if you're spending over $1,000 on GPU, you're probably gonna get Nvidia. AMD needs to actually come in significantly cheaper and still offer the same performance. Like, literally, like, knock 40% of the price off, at least on that top end chip, because the margins are crazy when they cost that much. So you can actually afford to do that. This is their best margin product, is the really expensive stuff.
It was $900, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not making that
which
up.
is crazy, but yeah, it was.
When it was $900 and they're asking what my review was going to be like, and I'm like, this. And at the time, that was the product that they were focused on. They had the most stock for.
Yeah, not the XTX, which was the clearly better product.
So they had the most 7900 XTs. Yeah. That was the product they were focused on. And they're like, what do you think about that product? And I'm like, it's very bad at $900. Like, utter garbage. And they were shocked. And I'm like, why?
Dude, they got no self-awareness. That just gives me no confidence. And then on top of that, when they released the 7600, they messed with the pricing on that card as well. It was gonna be, that card was gonna be $300 and cost the same as the 4060 with about the same rasterization performance. They're like within like 1% of each other. And they're like, oh shit. Well, we can't. Nvidia's better at that price point, so we have to cut the price. Where is the self-awareness?
Why is the price so bad for this product? It doesn't even make any sense compared to the 7900 XTX. It needs to be like $800 max.
Yeah.
And they were a bit confused by that. And I said, I guarantee you, within like a month, 2 months max, this will be an $800 product, and it'll probably go as low as like $700.
What makes it even worse is they made more stock of the 7900 XT. They thought that was the winner. That's what was going to make them money. People were going to buy that. Like, oh.
If you're right, and you know, because we've seen it time and time again, it happened. And was it only like a month that it lost $100?
You'd have to check my pricing updates. We could probably put that information on the screen,
Sure.
the charts there. But
I think how it works on the retailer side of things, they buy the cards from AMD, obviously, or whatever board partners they're buying them from. And then they have to set the pricing. MSRP is kind of like, oh, this is what we suggest. If they need to move product, I don't know how much margin retailers get to move product. I think sometimes if they're really not moving, then they will get rebates from AMD or board partners so that they could actually cut them down more, which eats into AMD's margins. And if AMD knew it was going to be such a bad product, why did they not launch it at $900? So it took longer than I thought. So this card started at $900 in December, dropped, and the 7900 XTX was out of stock, so that's cool. But in February, it got to $850. I thought it moved faster than this. Am I crazy? I thought it was literally like a month and it was at least discounted $50. But maybe this is like consistent pricing. Like, you could always find it for that price. AMD should focus on the ultra lower end. I agree with cutting ray tracing from the lower end chips. I still think like they should do that because it's expensive to add RT cores to your chips. At the low end of the pricing stack, RT is so like bad. It's so unplayable. It's like, why do the cards even have it? It's kind of just like put a check on the marketing box or something. They could save some money technically if they don't put RT cores on it, but I don't know the full side of things. Like, would technically speaking it be more effective to leave the RT cores on there? Because then they wouldn't have to redesign the chip. I don't know. Maybe somebody can correct me.
Why release it for $900 and get slammed universally when you could just drop it to 800 and did anyway. I don't know what their internal process is, but I don't know who at AMD was like, oh, this will actually sell okay, or, you know, this won't be too poor. Like, the only conclusion you could have drawn if you had the data and looked at it was that there is no way this is selling for $100. This is at best an $800 product, and even then it's not great. Like, that should have been the internal feedback.
See, if they actually thought about how the 7900 XT launched and when they were prepping the pricing and trying to decide things, they would notice at a $900, like, oh, that doesn't really match up that well against their 6950 XT. Because a lot of people are going to argue, like, oh, the 6950 XT compared to the 7900 XT, this card was $1,100, so $200 off to get the 7900 XT, and it's like 10% faster, and it has more VRAM. Oh my god, it's so much better. We have to get back to reality. Like, $1,000 for a graphics card is overpriced, and the only reason they can charge that much for it is because there's nothing up there to compete with it. Realistically, this wasn't like the 7900 XT was not a good deal at its price point of $900 because of how much cards actually cost.
$800 product, and even then it's not great. Like, that should have been the internal feedback, and they should have never tried to target $900 because
made these cards and they priced them. The executives in their suits were like, oh yeah, we can milk these gamers. Like, we can just get so much money out of them. But realistically, no, you can't. Okay, you can't. We're not gonna buy them. Okay, and they're gonna rot on shelves until they cost almost $200 less. Or now people are talking about the 7900 XT at $700 to be actually a good deal. Internally, if they had some self-awareness, they would look at the price at $900 like, this isn't a good price for this product. It's not going to be competitive. And then they'd be like, oh, maybe we should drop it down to 800. But if we want to make it, like, as Steve had just said,
this is selling for $100. This is at best an $800 product, and even then it's not great.
Which is an 800 class card. This costed $650. AMD would have to realize how much they messed up because they made an 800 class card. It should have been a 7800 XT. They just don't want to admit it. And now they have to shift their whole pricing structure and stuff because they just messed up so bad with their naming. All to try to make a little bit more money at launch.
Like, that should have been the internal feedback, and they should have never tried to target $900 because they just look silly every time. And I swear that product's been like $700, hasn't it? Like $720 or something like that. That's been.
I think the absolute.
It was an ASRock card on Newegg for like $720 or something just the other week.
Yeah, I think flash sales have gotten it down to $700. It's been pretty consistently $750 though, which is still a big.
$750 is
big
like, discount. If it launched at $750, it would have got pretty rave reviews, I think.
It would have done well. It would have done well at $750, and that's just what's disappointing is you just see AMD do this over and over again with their cards, the 6900 XT, as you guys said in chat.
Wasn't even like the performance of the card should have said that the $900 to $1,000 difference between XT and XTX was going to be a problem. It was even just the specifications of the.
And what's so weird too is like how internally do you not realize when you're charging $1,000 for a graphics card? Like, you know, if you think about like down the product stack, we've seen cards like I think the 1060 6GB launched at $300, and the 1070 launched for $380 or something like that. Proportionally, those are $80 apart, but it's at the lower end of the product stack, so that percentage difference between the cost of the cards is greater. I don't know what was even going through AMD's heads when they launched the 7900 XT. Who in their right mind was working at AMD was like, yeah, this is fine.
The performance of the card should have said that the $900 to $1,000 difference between XT and XTX was going to be a problem. It was even just the specifications of the card itself made it very unlikely that there would be a performance margin to justify that price.
So you say on paper it didn't make sense without even testing it?
Yeah, on paper it didn't make sense because the specs weren't there.
It's like, can we even trust AMD to make good decisions when they just can't even realize when they make the card, yeah, that pricing is going to be bad. It's like how Nvidia launched this 4060 Ti 16GB. I'm not saying Nvidia's a saint or anything. I was saying they launched that card. They knew it was going to be bad. And like the jerks that they are, they did nothing about it to fix it. They tried to quietly launch it. Like it never happened. AMD didn't do that. If you see the 7900 XTX, they announced this card is like, this is our fastest card. It's awesome. And everything. On the back end, they overstocked the 7900 XT. They only talked about the Extra X, without the Extra X one, for like probably a quarter of the time they talked about the big boy. Like, do you just see me scrolling here? XTX, XTX, XTX. If they wanted people to actually buy the XT, it seems like internally, at least somebody at AMD knew that this card wasn't going to do as well.
Let's go back to the 7900 XTX announcement, and they were sort of talking about what performance they're expecting versus the 6950 XT, and they were expecting a much larger margin than what independent reviewers found later.
Which is so confusing as well, because if it was a year out, it's like, okay, guys, you kind of popped off a bit early on that one. But it was like a month, 2 months. Like,
they had the cards.
It was very close to launch.
As we show in this presentation, they reveal the XTX numbers. I've talked about this many times, how these weren't accurate numbers and how close they were to launch. This isn't like, oh, the drivers didn't make it there. It's about to launch in a month. They should know how it performs. Like, bro, who are we buying GPUs from?
Because again, the AMD contacts I'm speaking with, like, oh no, your numbers are definitely wrong. Like, it's, well, your review guide's showing that it's a bit larger, but it's not as large as what you originally claimed.
It's like they didn't even know. It's like they didn't even know how their own product performed. I think what AMD needs to do with their marketing is genuinely don't bullshit your marketing. Because when you're trying to be the valued, well, they don't believe that they're the value GPU brand because they think they can compete at $1,000 with Nvidia or whatever. The XTX did sell pretty well though. You shouldn't lie about your product. You want transparency, you want honesty. When you see that Nvidia is talking up their numbers with frame generation because you turn on this funny little setting in your program and it doubles your FPS, but those are fake frames. You know what you could do as a company to be appealing? Don't lie. Be a company that we could actually look to the products to and get excited for, and not think that you're always lying every single time you talk about numbers like this. They're talking up their numbers here, trying to justify the price tag that they're putting it to, trying to justify $1,000 for it. Maybe they don't want to live up to the fact it's like, it's not worth that much. Okay, you don't get margins like Nvidia does. Stop thinking about their margins at launch and think about years down the line. Was like, guess what? If you do cut your margins a little bit now, you're going to be able to charge a little bit more later on, like Nvidia is.
You know, spoke with other YouTubers and their numbers and margins seem the same as mine, but AMD saying, no, it's better than that. That was a very confusing situation, and ultimately AMD was wrong, which makes them, again, look just silly, just unnecessary.
That's such a good word for it. They look silly. In the PC gaming community, there's definitely a level of normies in this community that don't watch the money as much or do their research as thoroughly. But still, on average, people that are buying individual computer components are still more technically savvy people that do understand a little bit more of what's going on, because the floor of entry, the skill floor is higher to enter this. It's not like buying a console or something that you can't just like buy it, set it on your TV stand, just be like, it's fine.
Yeah, like I think they need to sort of reevaluate how they're doing those sorts of internal benchmarks and sort of how it's moving up the chain to people making pricing decisions and things like that. Like, I'm sure there's been some miscommunication there where...
How?
I don't know. I don't know.
I know. There's no other explanation. I get where you're going, but it's just like, how?
I think there's also executive level people don't have a great feel for how gamers actually buy products, especially when...
This is what I was just talking about.
You know, we're talking about $1,000-ish product where a lot of people would just...
Why do I get swarmed? All right, we have another cat. He saw his tail. Wait, Reed, say hi. This is Reed. He's a Bengal Maine Coon. So he's a big cat. There he is.
If you have $1,000 or $900 to spend, and there's a card that's basically even the same value, and it's $100 more, the vast majority of people pay the $100 more, because we're talking about wealthy individuals.
You upsell.
They're talking about people that have $1,000 to spend on one component of their PC. You know what I mean? Like,
you can upsell with a premium.
Yes.
You can't downsell with a premium.
Yeah.
Like, well, we've got something that's a fair bit slower, but it's not quite as good value. Do you want that?
Yeah, it's like
no, I want it to be slower but better value.
It's like, yeah, I'm paying $900. I'm on the budget end of this, okay? So, like, I want to save some money. Like, I can't quite afford the $1,000 one. Okay. AMD's like, we got you.
It's like that would work in a situation where the market you're targeting are people who can afford $900 but absolutely can't afford $1,000. But it's like, who's that person?
Yeah.
That person, like...
$900 costs more than most people's PCs. Your monitor should be the most expensive part of your PC. I actually can't relate to that. I don't think. You can get nice monitors for like literally like $300 right now. So I'd say that's no, I ain't gonna lie.
That's not how the market is thinking at the moment at all. Like no one is buying $1,000 to replace, spending $1,000 on a GPU to replace an RTX 3070. It's just not happening.
The 2080 Ti came out.
So
put short.
It wasn't even a Titan card that cost like $1,200. Plus just said most people don't just play games. Even if just have hobbies, I can't use a Wacom tablet on PlayStation. The only thing is like when you're paying $1,000, that's like a huge investment, at least for most people, for a graphics card. You're probably using it for more than just gaming at that price point. I would hope you are.
AMD needs to fundamentally change the way they're approaching the GPU market.
Yeah, I agree.
And not joking or what, like they actually need to completely change the way they view it and tackle it, because the way they're doing it is just, they're going to continue to fail. They've made no inroads when they should have. RDNA 2 was good. RDNA 3 is good, despite falling short of expectations set by AMD. Good products, good architectures, they should be able to sell well. And they've just gone about...
AMD did kind of mess up on RDNA 3. They thought they could get more out of it than they did, I think. If these were the performance games they were actually getting, like they would actually have better scaling throughout the price range, but they don't have that.
RDNA 2, sure, there was the shortages or the oversupply, and you could cut them some slack there. We still thought they should be prioritizing RDNA 2 more than they did. But as we noted at the time, you know, we don't know everything that's going on, so
yeah,
let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think
they're probably in a tough situation with RDNA 2, where they're trying to do this balancing act where their old stock is at good prices right now, and they still want this stuff to sell, you know what I mean? But they also need to make an entrance with their new stuff, because the new stuff is what actually draws attention.
They should be doing a lot better than they are. And they're not, I don't know what the mindset is over there at AMD, but Nvidia's already doing the wrong thing in our opinion, and they're not getting great sales because of it. But they've got the market share, the mind share, all of that stuff. AMD's not in a position, and never have been in a position, where they can be like, how much is Nvidia charging? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, Kale, like, I think they do need to make their new stuff better, but see, like, the bar is so low because of how garbage Nvidia's products are. Like, they don't even need to make it that good. It just needs to not cost an arm and a leg. 25% less, because AMD's software is there. The ray tracing with RDNA 3 is actually pretty good. And if they offered more VRAM at the prices, / faster VRAM with a higher memory bus, I think that products would be really compelling.
That's not the situation you're in AMD. You are completely delusional. You need to price your products well below what Nvidia's doing.
Especially at the high end.
Yeah, for multiple reasons though. Like, first of all, make it too good to ignore for game.
It's funny. So you like hear, like, this is like a passionate like thing. Like, you know, did somebody say I didn't like Adrenaline? I like AMD products. Their marketing and their pricing on launch is terrible. Okay, I like Adrenaline. It's actually really good. They make great software. Yeah, I mean,
for multiple reasons though. Like, first of all, make it too good to ignore for gamers who are like, only have, you know, Nvidia vision. And so you get positive reviews. That's like the thing that's...
Pricing at launch ruins reviews. And guess what? Reviews stay on the internet forever. Because we see, I think there's 6600 XT. They didn't review this product very well. They went how much for 1080p gaming? Because this card was like $400 or something for 1080p. It sticks with them forever. And now reviewers are starting to have to warn people. It's like, well, the price is probably going to go down at some point. At that point in time, maybe it'll be a good deal. Reviewers shouldn't have to do that.
So frustrating about all of this is they did it with Ryzen. They had an inferior gaming processor. Everyone knew it was inferior.
Of course, AMD saw it, Vex. Steve and Tim refused to explain AMD pricing because if they did, and I have pressed them to do, that they would have to attribute that data to me. What are you... Mike is him.
The most superior gaming CPU, but the game performance is good enough. It's a stable CPU. It's on a great platform, which proved to be truer and truer as time went by.
Which just like shows like you need to like be realistic with how much performance you actually need. That's the point of that.
But they did it with Ryzen. They priced the CPUs where they needed to be. They weren't like, well, you know, we're not quite as fast as an 8700K. Just knock $30 off and call it good.
I don't know about you guys, but this is where AMD gained a lot of trust. Like, I remember when I was looking to upgrade my system, I was looking at the FX CPUs. It's like, man, the single core performance is garbage, but they do give you a lot of cores. So it's kind of like what AMD did when they came into Ryzen is like they took a hit to their margins. They realized that, hey, their chips genuinely aren't as good as the competition. So they price them less, and Radeon isn't doing the same thing at all. That's what got me into Ryzen. That's why I got an R5 1600, because what was that chip? Is like $200 or something for 6 cores, 12 threads. That's what got me into it. I was like, wow, that's such a cool value.
If they'd done that,
it would have
AMD would have died as a company.
Yeah, they would have. But for some reason, they think that they don't need to do that with the Radeon division. It makes no sense.
And like Nvidia keeps giving AMD softballs. They throw a really slow pitch and it's coming straight at their head, which is like, GPUs are badly priced in the mid-range.
Is this a metaphor and analogy? I think it's analogy, actually. I love Tim's analogy here.
Pitch and it's coming straight at their head, which is like, GPUs are badly priced in the mid-range. How will you respond? It's coming straight for them.
Nvidia's like, we have garbage products. We're gonna give you all the time in the world, the easiest pitch, just to hit it out of the park, and here's AMD.
And they swing and miss every time.
They just run.
Everyone is talking about GPUs are too expensive. Everyone's saying this. People are like, $400 GPUs are all bad. All the options are bad. At $600, bad. The AMD option is, let's solve that problem, right? Mm-hmm. They've got a problem there. Let's forget about margins for a little bit. If we want an actual legitimate long-term strategy to make Radeon a viable option in the market for...
Exactly what Tim is saying. It's what Intel is doing right now. Intel is targeting the lower end cards. They've had to drop their prices a lot because I don't think they have the performance on this first generation Alchemist cards as they want. They're targeting like $300 to $500 price range, and I think Battlemage is going to really lean into that more. And AMD needs to target that range as well, because that's where most people actually buy their GPUs. The AMD did this before with the 5700 XT. They put the Hertz to Nvidia during RTX 2000 series because we can't even compete with the 2080 Ti. The 5700 XT is now to this day about the third most popular AMD GPU that exists.
People
win back some market share, get some
win back market share, win back mind share. Yep. And AMD still, despite all of this effort, is sort of just going, what about we just do what Nvidia's doing? It's like, no.
It's a duopoly. That's kind of what I'm thinking it is nowadays. I ain't gonna lie. AMD puts up a good act though, that they do want to compete. I don't know if they actually want to compete. You're not valued at hundreds of billions of dollars as a company at AMD, and you don't understand how the market works. Like, do they want to compete? I don't know.
And the issue that they've got a lot of the time as well at the moment is a lot of these good value cards that are competing with Nvidia's products are all old products. They're all stuff that's already been talked about and reviewed. There's no, as we've talked about, a lot of reviewers and websites, most of them, even us at times, don't go back and reevaluate a product.
You just have to get it in the minds of people again, because it's up to reviewers to go back and talk about the old product and like reevaluate the old product. And not everybody does that. Or it's like trying to re-educate people on things that isn't even supposed to be current anymore.
An official
price cut with maybe a new name.
The problem is they keep doing what they're doing. As I said, they're going nowhere. They're just treading water. They're not making the inroads they need to. For some reason, they seem like they don't want to.
Reno just said, when will you get your GPUs by AMD and Nvidia directly? I don't know. I did email Intel directly of the bugs I experienced, and it seems like they're actually receptive to feedback. I think they're working on some of the things I talked about. They did say if they have an extra 750, if I would like to receive an A750 for future testing. I was like, yeah, don't tell Intel I said this, but I was going to buy one anyways. So they do send me one. Nvidia is sharing its drugs with AMD.
They announced FSR 3 back when the RX 7900 series was announced. I believe that's when they sort of talked about
it was like a
FSR.
knee-jerk reaction to try and make RDNA 3 seem better than what it is.
Somebody did ask the people that work at AMD, I don't know if they're exactly responsible for this, it could have been their marketing team, but they said that this wasn't a reaction to DLSS 3. DLL, bro, these acronyms, man. I think it clearly was, and the fact that it isn't ready yet is like, I think they literally just started working on it. AMD won't even show it. Yes, Kapun, like, dude, you're so right. Like, why haven't we seen anything? Like, you'd think they'd have a test demo or something just to kind of get us excited about it.
It's all exclusive to RDNA 3.
I guess from our perspective is, well, we've looked at RDNA 2 be quite successful in terms of the architecture and the resulting products. We're seeing pretty much the same thing with RDNA 3, but what we're not seeing from AMD is a plan. Like, what's their plan?
What's their plan? We don't know their plan. They leave it intentionally vague. A company isn't going to tell you their plan to make you buy their stuff, but like usually the writing's on the wall. Like, you know what they're doing. In my original video, why AMD graphics cards are so great but no one buys them, I talked about mindshare in this. You don't think about AMD. It's like a lot of people are pretty surface level with their understanding and don't even know that AMD is an option, or pretenses from AMD's past, where they weren't as good as Nvidia, like with their software, their drivers and stuff. That can like get in the way of even considering them as an option. That's what they need to break. Reviewers have been taking hold and saying like, hey, AMD is a good option and you should consider them. They're just really shit at marketing. So the reviewers do the marketing for them.
No, I want a GeForce GPU.
Lack of brand awareness.
I can't really tell you why. It's just because, you know, a streamer uses it or they're familiar with them. They haven't used Radeon before. They've heard that maybe Radeon...
That is one thing too. Streamers, I cannot recommend streaming on an AMD card. Intel is better. And Intel's on their first generation part. Nvidia is way better as well than AMD. So like streamers are going to be probably streaming on Nvidia. And that's if you're streaming to Twitch, because H.264 as an encoder on AMD GPUs is just garbage.
And I've had a few different people I know quite well who have then bought a Radeon GPU and they're like, oh my God, like this is actually better experience than what I have with my GeForce GPU. The software is much better, much more polished. The features seem easier to access. There's more features. Things like Relive work just as well as Shadowplay. You know, the AV1 encoding support works just as well as what you see on Ada Lovelace.
And AMD's software, you don't need a freaking account.
Now, the truth is, at least with the current generation stuff, there's just as many problems with GeForce GPUs as there are with Radeon GPUs, but they both generally work quite well.
I love Adrenaline. It's really nice. AMD and Nvidia GPUs both have their upsides and their downsides. Like, neither of them are perfect, but they're both really good.
It's all there. They've got all the ingredients. Like, Radeon is in the best position, in my opinion, it's ever been in.
Because, like, back in the heyday of the RX 580 or something like that, at that point in time, like, AMD drivers weren't that reliable yet. They were inconsistent. But nowadays, they've drastically improved that stuff. Maybe that's what they've been working on. I don't know why the engineering team working on the software would be stopping the marketing team from doing a good job. And then now with confidence, they might do something better. I have no clue.
And they're still just like, oh yeah, knock a little bit off the price and that's how we compete with Nvidia. It's like, no, that's not how you compete with Nvidia. No one cares.
Yeah, I want AMD to compete. Like, I don't want Nvidia to just be up there just like chill and do whatever the heck they want. That's not good for us, dude. Like, as much as like the console wars debate, like PS5, Xbox or whatever, we can get heated or be on like fanboys or whatever. Like, who really cares about the fanboy stuff? At least there's healthy competition in the console space. What's funny is AMD makes the chips for both of those consoles. The Switch is in just a world of its own, like PC gaming space with GPUs. It's just Nvidia, really, and then AMD following what Nvidia does with their marketing, and then it's up to like reviewers and word of mouth to tell people that AMD is a good option and that their software is underrated and people shouldn't be as cautious around getting an AMD GPU.
Again, there could be I'm sure how long is this question been going for? Years.
The TikTok generation are pissed right
Yeah, they're like,
now.
oh my God.
They're like,
shout outs to my TikTokers right here.
Let's swipe to the next one.
HC window, bro, you're literally watching a live stream right now.
As well that are maybe being set too low for the Radeon division. I'm sure with RDNA 2, for example, that they did sell more cards than RDNA 1, which maybe internally was like, tick. And then they go to RDNA 3 and it's like, okay, well, we sold more RDNA 2 products, so clearly we're on the right track. So let's just keep doing what we were doing. And, you know, if that's their sort of internal, what they're benchmarking themselves against, maybe that's either misreading the market because we've gone from crypto mining to no crypto mining. So if sales go backwards when they're thinking that sales are still going to be at that level, that's going to be an issue for them. If they're sort of sitting around and saying, we're comfortable with 15% market share or something like that, that's the wrong...
Because that's the thing is like, they just did it recently. They just did Ryzen and now Ryzen is like I think getting close to half of the CPU market nowadays, because their products are compelling and they were priced well, and it really made people talk about them. AMD was about to go bankrupt and Ryzen saved them. They also need to talk about how like competitive Radeon software is nowadays compared to Nvidia's.
I think the 5700 XT sold pretty well, and that was in no man's land in terms of RDNA lineup. That was the flagship product.
Yeah, we do most of it pretty good.
But that's one thing they can do is like, okay, sure, you're not going to get the mindshare bonus of having the fastest product, but you can take the win of having a fairly well-priced mid-range.
Yeah, it's $100 less.
What's funny is like they saw exactly what they needed to do with the 5700 XT or 5000 series in general. We need to really market to what people actually want, and we want value, especially when value is so bad right now. Maybe when they do the 7700 XT, maybe it'll come in with like 12 to 16 gigabytes of VRAM, and then they could literally show it a side-by-side against the 4060 Ti at $400, and then they'll just be like, hey, look, your textures aren't ruined. Hey, look, you're not running out of VRAM. Like, hey, look, like it wouldn't even, like the marketing wouldn't be that hard.
I swear that was like 20 minutes of question answering right there.
Well, again, for the people who like YouTube shorts and get triggered when we talk about something, for people who get triggered when we have a discussion, a conversation, which is kind of what the Q&As are about. It's not just about addressing questions as quickly as possible. It's that Tim and I catching up and having a chat about tech-related stuff.
Like 80% of that was not actually answering that question directly.
Yeah. So sorry.
This question was, is AMD missing out on market share? Yeah, this isn't even like, most of this wasn't regarding that at all. AMD, just get some self-awareness, guys. Like, if they want to continue their strategy of just, charging like 10% less, like Steve said, and then like people think that people will buy them, like, hey, if you just want to be the value brand, you just got to charge even less. Okay, you got to be like undeniable value. Huge shout out to Hardware Unbox for making this video. Hardware Unbox, or I guess more Steve specifically, was basically the only channel that I've seen so far made the plunge, took the sacrifice of buying a 4060 Ti 16 gigabyte at $500. And in Australian, I think it was like over $1,000. Just shout outs to the legend. I had to vent that out for AMD. I hope AMD sees this video.